What is good, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me. My name's Pete, aka PA Soul, and you are tuned into the SoulCast. Again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode 2 of the SoulCast. We have E.T. the Brain here, one of my personal favorite people on this planet Earth. He's a multimedia, super talented artist. He works in all different types of creative mediums on the internet, in music. He's the man. He's got so many different creative ideas, and he's so out there, and he's so philosophical. And he's been a friend of mine since high school, and I'm really excited to share him with you guys. Today was a great conversation. We went all over the place. We talked about, politics and what's going on with the country's, actually, when you're listening to this, it's going to be just past election, the tensions that we feel in society right now. But one of the main things we talked about was this book that we're reading. It's called The Death of the Artist by William, I think it's Deresiewicz. I'm not 100% sure how you pronounce his last name, but this book is one that he recommended to me, and it's been changing the way I view artistry in general. It's incredible. I'm not sponsored by these guys. I'm not sponsored by this publishing company, by this author. I'm just telling you from the bottom of my heart, this changed the way I look at artistic endeavors on a business level. Because I feel like so often we as artists like to just kind of push aside the business side. We have to push aside the money-making, grounded part of our endeavors, but it's very important. And we need to embrace it as opposed to pushing it away. Otherwise, how are we going to find success? It won't be possible. And we scratched the surface a little bit on this book, but I really recommend pick up a copy today. If you are a student thinking about going for music in college, if you are somebody who is a creative person already, just got out of college, dropped out of high school, even if you're a 10-year veteran, you can get something out of this. And we talk about the state of the music industry in this interview. And, a lot of it is very intertwined with the themes in this book. So enough about that, enough rambling. Here is my interview with the one, the only, the all-powerful E.T. the Brain. And I think we are rolling.
Was popping.
What's good, E.T. the Brain? Welcome to SoulCast episode 2. How you feeling?
Fine.
Fine?
I feel fine.
You appear
I'm
to be in
excited
the
to be
jungle,
on.
bro.
Well, I
Explain
think
to me about
technically, this photo is taken from an ocean at the jungle.
Okay, so you're
So,
in the ocean looking at the jungle right now?
Yeah,
I got you.
treading water to try to get this photo using nothing but my eyes.
And like
That's
we said,
the canon of the photo.
that diner ass shirt of yours is gonna keep popping in and out the whole time. But you know what?
Yeah. Hopefully it won't ruin the production value. I'll try to just keep my shoulders straight. I think it's the lighting is the problem.
Bro, you think we have production value here, man? We're doing this.
No,
for
I don't
free.
think you have any value here.
Production value. Motherfuckers talking about production value. If you want to invest in me, then we can have a different conversation. So how you living, man? I feel like, all right, so we haven't chilled in was it going on 8 or 9 months now?
No, not really. Yeah, because of the fucking pandemic, bro.
I saw you one time. I saw you 2 months ago.
Yeah.
After pulling in from work.
I'm loosening it up now that the old man is dead. But it's just been...
Rest in peace.
Everybody went home, and for about a couple months, I just, played Minecraft and waited to see how it was all going to shake out. And then after that, everything went nuts. I don't know what I can talk about here in terms of personal stuff, because some of it's a little on the DL. But I'll hit you about it later, because you're probably not going to see me for about 6 more weeks.
Oh shit!
And then it might be a little bit above and beyond.
Wow.
Because some shit's going down. So let's see how it goes.
Bad shit or
No, good shit.
Oh, good. Okay, so that's good.
Other than the old man, it's been mostly good.
That's good.
Mostly good coming up.
You're soaking up the unemployment, right?
I was when I was unemployed. Now I'm off it.
I got
I'm
you.
still, for a while, I was living off. Yeah, I was living off stimuli, and I mean the whole economy crashed. you know?
I still can't believe like the depth and scope of this thing.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. I was never the biggest Trump fan, but I believed him when he was like, "Yeah, it'll be done by May. All right, it'll be done by June.
right.
All
Because
right, it'll be
everybody
done by
wanted to, right?
July." Yeah, it was like a longing to believe. It was like a desire to believe when it
Yeah,
still was just not happening. You know what I mean? And now that we got fucking Biden, hopefully it'll actually be a thing now.
yeah,
Hopefully the world can bounce back a little bit.
yeah.
It was
I was,
fucking
I
gonna
don't know. I
crash.
was handling the whole thing super stoically as I do, where I was like, it's probably better just to not assume it's ever going to end.
Hmm.
So that way, when it does, it'll be like a nice, pleasant surprise. You know what I mean?
I mean,
But
I can't live off it, dude. I know you can live off of that assumption, but I can't live off
oh
of
yeah,
it. I'll lose my mind if I just live off of the assumption that all right, this is just how life is now. I might end up
well, it is.
murdering
It's
somebody.
funny to me seeing people be like, "Yeah, I can't wait until everything is the same again." And it's like everything that's not going to happen.
That
That
ship has
sucks.
sailed.
But like masks, even when they're not mandated, you're going to see people wear them, and
Hmm.
it's going to be smart. Like flu season is a
All the
good time
weenies.
to be protecting,
That's fair.
and like indoor concerts, like these venues aren't. There's going to be no repairing these venues for 15 years. You know what I mean?
That the
Like,
venues that are still around. I mean, think about just
yeah.
locally, right? We lost Jupiter Hall before the pandemic. We
Mhm.
lost. I mean, is Northern Lights even going to be open anymore? Like they
Northern
had
Lights,
a shit.
Northern Lights will probably survive.
You
I
think
think
so?
they're big enough. Yeah, I mean they've got enough of a brand, right? Where you
Gotcha.
want Northern Lights to survive.
Hmm.
But like the only places other than that, I mean, obviously Times Union's gonna be fine.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, they
Uh,
just got they had Maroon 5 there a couple of years ago. They're
right.
going to be just fine. You know what I mean? That's
Like
fucking.
booked out for 21 Pilots.
But that's dude. That's one of the things that I've noticed about the pandemic in general, man. The fucking pandy is that everybody, like the small guy, is the one that takes the brunt of it. You know what I mean? Amazon's
Yeah.
fine. Walmart is fine. You know what I mean?
Well,
Jeff Bezos is making more money now than he's ever made. Bill
I think
Gates is making
it's
more money now than he's ever made. Everybody that's carrying the burden of this is small business owners, people who are like,
yeah.
in precarious job situations like wait staff and fucking restaurant owners.
But I think it's also been really revealing of a lot of this stuff. Like um, we're seeing just in music, like a lot of musicians are getting really screwed over, and that sucks. But also, you got to look at those people and go like, there's some people who just got caught in this awkward situation where like you're starting to get steam,
Mm,
and then it got cut off.
yeah.
But there's people, and this is especially true in business. I said this about Quibi when they died.
Hmm.
I said one of the primary like social responsibilities of a corporation should be sustainability in being able to survive, not just through a pandemic, because I give you a little bit of leeway for that, like that's crazy,
Mm.
but Quibi's business plan was never going to survive any sort of hardship. And that's true of a lot of these local businesses and small businesses, which are kind of run on these like back of the hand, like napkin math and shadiness, and like assuming the regulars are always coming back, and they're not really built to like I've been saying it a lot about minimum wage, because nobody
Mm.
wants to see the minimum wage and the Biden tax plan, right, are absolutely going to destroy everything
Well, I'm not
according
even
to some
familiar with it.
people.
Enlighten me.
It's not that complicated. It's just an increase on social security tax and corporate tax for the top 0.9% of corporations,
Mm.
and it's like barely above rate of inflation.
Mm.
Like it's a tiny sliver, and people think it's going to ruin everything, but it's gas prices are going to skyrocket, and like you won't be able to afford bread and eggs and milk, even though those things are price controlled.
You won't be able to get toilet paper. Oh wait, never mind.
Yeah.
Nobody's been shitting in
So
America for 6 fucking months.
it's going to ruin everything, right? But like
Yeah.
it isn't, because good businesses can afford to pay you a little bit more money and not die, and bad businesses can't. And it's irresponsible to be building businesses that can't just like, it's hard to feel bad for you if you can't at least recoup from this,
Mm-hmm.
because it means you were built on such a flimsy, shoddy foundation that like you should have at least been able to recognize. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of these businesses that are going to get flushed out. It's just like the subprime mortgage loans that crashed everything in 2009. They're
Mm.
just going to come back, and it's going to be different people in different businesses. But I think you also need to look around at people who are navigating this well and go, no, like those are the people who can kind of handle it.
That's
Like
true.
Jeff Bezos is a huge scumbag, but Amazon at least handled it. And when you look at small businesses, the fact that there's antique stores who are like able to pay their mortgage through this whole thing,
Mm.
that's a huge credit to them. And the musicians, like I thought Open Mike Eagle handled it really well, going from living off of gigging to immediately starting to build his Instagram presence
Mm.
and go live that way. I look a lot at like pro wrestlers who have all like moved to Twitch,
Mm-hmm.
which has caused some controversy, right? But like, that's business, baby. Like,
You got to be malleable. I think there's a couple things with what you just said. First of all, I think entrepreneurs, businessmen in general, not numbers guys. You know,
no,
at least the majority of people I know that are into business and that are, working to create a business, they are not logistical whatsoever. They don't really keep that in mind. They're not, that's
yeah,
not really like a primary thing that they're worried about. They're worried about the vision. They're worried about the Kanye level
right,
ideas
right,
without the, fucking Steve Wozniak particulars. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like we could use a lot more of the, yeah, I don't know. I kind of, I've been back and forth between this idea of like, how many bean counters do we actually need in the world? You know what I mean? This
right.
world is already so flushed with people that want to pick apart every little thing that I'm like, I don't really know how many more of you we need. We don't, like, that guy is already, we need people with
Right.
bigger ideas, but also bigger leadership. That's the second part, I think, is that this exposed to me the fact that we have no leadership at all. There's nothing. Nobody,
No.
and because leadership is responsibility, right? And nobody wants to take responsibility. None of the politicians took responsibility. None of the heads of any companies took any responsibility. We got one $1,200 check for 8 months of suffering. You know what I mean? Who's going to live on that? That's ridiculous. So it's a lack of empathy and a lack of responsibility on the business end, the government end, everybody. It really exposed the fact that we don't really have any real leaders anymore. We have people that want to have ideas and implement those
Right.
ideas without accepting the fact that if those ideas fail, it falls on their shoulders. You know what I mean?
I think it's less that there's like zero leadership. And also, I don't think that every entrepreneur is like not a math guy,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there's two kinds of entrepreneurs. And there's math guys and there's vision guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all kind of like an 80-20 split. But the most successful people are usually like a 70-30, 60-40, like a
I
lot
got you.
more evened out. So I think there is leadership. It's just that I don't think people understand that accountability is leadership. I think they think that loud is leadership,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or like optimistic is leadership is a big one. Like people will follow whoever makes them feel the best. Uh,
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the loud, right?
yeah,
People love it, especially nowadays. It's like how toddlers choose leaders. You know what I mean? You ever see a group of toddlers? It's always the
yeah,
one that's the dumbest and the loudest. That
right.
even all the way up until high school, it's the dumb and loud people that
So
run the shit. And
last year, Eric Bischoff, who was the head of the only wrestling company to ever go head to head with the WWE and beat them for a little bit,
mm,
did a TED talk about the news and why Fox News anchors sound a lot like wrestling commentators, and how a lot of political and news rhetoric has become more. The thing that makes wrestling great is that you don't think about wrestling,
mm,
right? Like you watch it and it's just big sweaty men just doing big sweaty man stuff. And so you feel a certain way, right?
it's like
Like you
like
feel
one
for
step away from
somebody.
gay porn. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but but they do a great job of making you feel like, oh, I want that guy to win because I like him for these reasons, or I don't want that guy to win because he just called me fat and poor and
Mm,
I fucking hate him, right?
yeah.
So this guy did said talk about how that's what the news is sort of becoming, and that's what we're seeing from a lot of people. That's where the MAGA cult comes in, is that like Trump does a fantastic job of making people feel a certain way. But even this is the problem we kind of talked about a little bit ago with the Democrat Party, is like even Biden, if you really think about what he's doing, it's not going to be this like revolutionary idea that both sides seem to be propping it up as.
Mm-hmm.
It's like marginal changes in the US towards kind of just treading water a little bit better. And that's what people follow now.
The Democrats today are what the Republicans were in 1995. You know what I mean? The Democrats today are like the fucking squares, you know, like the people who are just like, I don't like loud music and fun, and I don't like anybody to have any opinions that I don't like. That's what the Republicans were in the 90s. And
Right.
and there was this like phase shift that happened, I noticed, where it's like the Democrats became the weenies and the Republicans became the cool people. Like, you know, obviously, there's exceptions to every rule, but like it
Right.
became cool again to be Republican. You know what I mean? For a lot of people, and
Yeah,
I think,
well, I think they worked to build that brand really hard. And I think it functioned because of like the so many social outcast societies. Something that's very funny to me. I'm I'm very anti kind of both parties at the moment.
oh, same. I can't stand either
Because
side.
every Republican leadership is just gross in every possible way. I just don't feel I feel the need to critique Democrats right now and not Republicans, because I feel like with Republicans you can just say, hey, like you think human rights are a political problem.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck you, eat a dick and die. Like, you know what I mean? I think that one's pretty clear. Democrats I feel are more reasonable, but it's funny to me like watching how they dealt with the Hispanic and Latino vote. Like a lot of these people want to be so anti-racist, but like you don't understand that Cubans and Mexicans are different kinds of people. Like they're
That's,
not,
dude.
you can't just
That's
throw
the
them all in
annoying
one
shit.
big like Cinco de Mayo party and just like no, like these are distinct groups of people, and you
Everybody talking
just
about race politics right now has no friends of any race except for their own. I feel like
right.
everybody in the major conversation right now has no black or Latino or Muslim friends, or it's just like it, because it seems to me like I said, the same nerdy geeky white people having the conversation. You know what I mean? The
Right.
Antifa people, for example, that's all like the kids that got bullied in school. You know what I mean? These are not the movers and shakers of our time. I
So
feel like the
this is
movers and shakers
why
of our time are in Silicon Valley, you know?
right.
Oh, my video decided to stop.
You
There we
back?
go. I'm back.
So one thing that I do feel a lot better about through this whole situation is New York,
Mhm.
because like okay, fuck Cuomo because I'm from New York, but like he's been a really strong and accountable and like noteworthy leader. Like you look at that guy and you still, even if you disagree with all of his everything, he's still out there going, yeah, like we thought this was going to be the thing, but we fucked up. You know, like we were wrong. And he's also out there going, hey, I don't like how that guy's doing it. That's something I miss in my own leadership. Is I like a guy who's quick, decisive, and just abrasive. Like
Mhm.
if you want me to follow you, you have to say you hold these things with as much strength and importance as I do. I'm not about to commend Ruth Bader Ginsburg for like getting dinner with Merrick Garland. Like you can be friends with people who you don't agree with politically, but sometimes those people just like think women shouldn't be able to take contraceptives, and that's not really something like we can't argue about birth control. And I think Cuomo's been a pretty clear like spearhead for that, as far as going, yeah, like Trump is just going to kill this country and he's not going to kill my state. And I
I,
like seeing him out there on that on that playing field.
That's fair. I believe, dude, I don't like Cuomo at all. I feel the opposite way about Cuomo. I feel like Cuomo wants to be everybody's daddy, but I
Oh
feel
yeah,
like Cuomo, and I don't appreciate that. I'm like, I already got a daddy. I don't need you, Andrew Cuomo, telling me what I can and cannot do. Same as Garcetti and fucking Newsom in California. I don't like any. All the Democratic governors to me, they seem to be doing the same thing, which is like, all right, now it's a state of emergency, so I'm just going to take all the power. I'm going to just
yeah,
do everything.
but that's
And
what
if you don't
executive
like it,
power is for. Like,
yeah, well, this is the beef with executive power, right? The beef with it is that if there's an issue that pops up, then there's one dude that just steps in like Adolf Hitler and is like, all right, now it's time to clean up. I'll help you clean this mess up. You know what I mean? This is why we even have the two-party system. This is why we even or not the two-party system, the two-house
yeah,
Congress is to stop dudes like that from just being able to do whatever they want. You know what
it's
I
not
mean?
like these people are operating completely alone though. Like we still do have state congresses and Supreme Courts that are overseeing these decisions.
That's
I
true.
think for a lot of Democratic governors, this looks like a power trip because we've never had to see governors flex so much power all at once.
Mm-hmm.
Because previously, when a national emergency came up, what we expected, even out of the complete fucking lame duck president that we have in office right now, is we expect a president to step up and say, "Hey, we're going to provide guidelines, and we're gonna handle this the right way." And then when that doesn't happen, somebody has to step in that role.
Mm-hmm.
And governors, I think, had to do that. I don't really think they were power tripping that bad on the
Mm-hmm.
whole. I do see where it starts to lead to issues, right? But if you look at
Well,
the
I was seeing this
response,
one thing. Like when you think there's this one thing I saw that really got me. Like it's not even
yeah,
my state, so I'm not super pissed about it. But like it was Newsom in
mm,
California. This was on a ton of different podcasts and shows and stuff. He put out an edict that was like, all right, here's the guidelines for your Thanksgiving party this year.
yeah.
And I was like, no.
But yes, like this is another thing that I think is fun, right?
Mhm.
Is there's a lot of people who seem to think leftists on the whole are anarchists, and there's a lot of people in the center right usually who want as little law put in place as possible,
Mhm.
which is an idea that I agree with. I think it's silly that we have laws that make stuff legal.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like we have to say that,
Yeah.
but also without that sort of like that back and forth coming in,
Mhm.
without people going, yeah, listen, like these are the guidelines. They know people are going to break them.
Mhm.
It's not like, I mean, I think even in New York City, we've seen where you would expect enforcement to be more difficult. You're seeing people like out on the streets in huge groups anyway,
Yeah.
which is the role of the government is to say, hey, that's not okay, right? Like we can't do that because we've got now this
I.
perfect combination of an idea of what that stuff is going to do, as
Mhm.
well as no idea of how bad it can be, right? And so it's like
Well,
something
that's the thing is
needs to
I
be made.
think being like a center right leaning guy, I'm like, you know what? I think that the government is here to tell us you're going to jail if you murder somebody. You're going to jail if you rape somebody. You're going to jail if
Right.
you steal millions of dollars from taxpayers. But that's it. You know what I mean? They shouldn't be there shouldn't be these little, things
That's
that
a super incarceral view of the government though,
Mhm.
which I think is another thing we have to examine because we see that at least the current American prison system as set up by Richard Nixon in the 70s
Mhm.
isn't a functioning prison system.
No, I'm not talking about the prison system. I'm talking
Yeah.
about like the cut and dry rules, powers for government should not they should be for major violent overreaches. I think the
Yes.
general health and welfare of the public should be determined by the public itself. You know what I mean? I'm not 100% for free market. Just open
Right.
the gates and let everybody do whatever. But that's
But do
that's
you
why
think
that's why there should be little things that we control and little things that we tweak about people. Like,
Right.
don't
But then we
murder,
have
don't
to
rape, and then all the rest of it beyond that is like, all right, well, it should be open to interpretation. Everybody
we
should be
have
able to
to
make their own decision.
consider though we have to consider though why those systems are put in place
Hmm.
and why the government is able to function like that.
Hmm.
Because I agree with you on the day to day that like the government shouldn't decide how society should be, the people should. But that's sort of the power of democracy, is that we all get together and we vote for who we're going to let lead us. Where otherwise, I think we see societies that reach this sort of point of like mutually assured destruction, like what Florida is going through right now. If I'm a person in Florida who is taking the pandemic seriously, who's concerned about my health, the infrastructure that exists now in New York to kind of get around all of these issues isn't so strong in Florida because of the amount of people who don't see the government telling them what to do, and so are just kind of proceeding like it's everything is fine.
See, that's
And
the thing.
that's leading to these huge spikes in cases.
I
And
don't think
that's
it's.
okay.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think it's like, I don't think people are doing what they want because they see the government letting them do it though. I think people are doing what they want, and people are rebelling against the fact that the government's even telling them what to do in the first place. Does that make sense? Like I don't think that people are deciding like, well, the government's not clamping down, so I guess I'm okay to run my business. You know what I mean? I think the people are deciding like, I'm running my business because that's my right, and any government clampdown can kiss my ass. You know what I
Right.
mean?
But those people are doing it out of a sense of entitlement, right? And because rebellion against the government is not how the government should function.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason the rebellion against the government exists, in my opinion, there's no positive feedback for it on a governmental structural level,
Mm-hmm.
right? You rebelling against the government, they're not going to care. If they do anything, it'll be by way of police. Not, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm going to run my lemonade stand and fucking shove it up Cuomo's ass, because he's not going to notice or care, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
They do it on a societal level. And that sort of rebellion and that sort of division in America right now is revealing of everything that's going on, because there's these subsections of people who, for whatever reason, uh, want to rebel against the government in its ability to mandate what they do,
Mm-hmm.
which in itself I view as anti-democratic and just kind of a big fuck you to what the government system is there to do. Because eventually carceral systems do need to get involved in this case,
Mm-hmm.
because like there's certain degrees of rebellion in which criminal behavior isn't deviant. We've all kind of agreed weed not deviant, right? Like if you smoke weed, no one's outcasting you. Heroin deviant. Heroin is also criminal, but a lot of people are looking to repeal that because that's not a thing that government mandate is helping with.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But your vote, theoretically, in a democratic government is there to show this is what the majority want done. This is what a majority of people think. And as long as we live that way, it's going to create that sort of divide between people who lost and people who won.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a necessary system because we have no other great way of enforcing who won and who didn't. So in a society where we don't have the people who won getting laws put in place, and we don't have these governors using the power that they're afforded to get done what they can, we see, again, places like Florida where it's controlled by deviant behavior.
That's fair.
Whether that behavior is criminal or not, these places are run by this sort of deviant behavior. Ideally, we would just send all of the like-minded deviants into their own little corners of the world and not deal with each other, right? But until we can all kind of agree that like we agree with the sanctity of the government in their ability to enforce and do what's right for us, which requires a major overhaul of the people who are in government right now on all sides, because there's like, I'm seeing Democrats and Republicans around here argue over who wants to fund the police more.
Yeah.
Right? Well, everybody's saying we want you to defund the police. like why are you arguing on that scale?
For me, it just, I don't know. I've always been wary. If you look at history of different crises, right?
Mm-hmm.
Governments use crises to step in and say, well, we know what's best for you. Here, you do
Right.
this because we know what's best for you. And I
Right.
think at a large scale, government on the whole for people's daily activities does not know what's best for you. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You as an individual. This is why that, first of all, this is why states get to decide how they want to implement masks and social distancing and stuff like that. Well, because like you said, if majority rule in Florida is saying that we want to be open because we don't want our businesses to fail, well, then New York can bitch and moan as much as it wants to bitch and moan, but
But we can't tell Florida what
that's
to
it.
do.
We can't tell Florida what to do. And this, by the same token, Florida can't tell New York if New York wants to be super conservative about it,
But
then we
I
can't
think we
tell
still
New
have
York what
to
to do.
ask, like, I'm not going to sit around and tell Florida what to do,
Mm-hmm.
but I am going to look at Florida and go, holy shit, look at those deaths. And is that a functional government?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think AOC is a person who's doing fantastically right now and getting out this sort of notion that the way we have to consider government is how do we want society to function and how can we get the government to achieve that,
And the other
right?
question is, do you buy the statistics that are put in front of you? Me personally, I find it hard to believe a lot of these statistics that I'm getting based on the different biases that the statistics have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's not a lot, there's not a lot of objective reporting in stats these days, and on top of that, stats on the whole, I feel like don't reflect the individual experience enough to really be a good justification for why we should clamp down on X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean?
I think that's fair if you believe science is all a sham and math doesn't exist. But there are places like the Pew Research Center, like the CDC, where these probably are biased statistics in that maybe they're counting deaths that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
That's what I'm
Maybe
talking
there are
about.
people who are
There's,
dying before they're tested.
yeah,
But you have to consider these are in the margins, right? And we're seeing 100,000 new cases a day and something like 200,000 total deaths from COVID so far.
mm-hmm.
If we can say maybe 1% of those is wrong, we're only knocking it down to 198,000 deaths, which
But
is a lot of
then that
deaths.
that depends on the stats you see, right? That depends because a lot of the stats I've been seeing coming from at least what I believed were reputable sources are, up to 40% of the COVID tests aren't real. Up to 40% of the COVID tests are falsely reported, false negatives or false positives. You know what I mean? On
But
top of
then,
that,
okay,
like, to me, it appears that there's a
so
lot
this
of.
comes back to my main
All
point,
right,
though.
and before we get too deep into this bullshit,
Yeah,
this podcast is supposed to be about music and
yeah.
creativity. You know what I
There's
mean?
there's
So
one more
make your
point
point
that
and
needs to
make
be
your point,
made,
and then
and I
we'll
can
move
run
on.
it back.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Power always comes from the people. We love to say Nazis were okay because they were just following orders, but they weren't. Because at any point in time, if the people in Germany had revolted and said, this isn't okay, it would have been an absolute bloodbath, but Hitler would have died. And in
Mhm.
everything we do, we have to understand that our sanctity and trust is important. And our ability to look at numbers and look at them from sources that we believe and find areas of mutual trust is what's going to push America forward. It's also what's important for musicians right now and for creatives is to understand that, like, the guy who's telling you if you just do this for 6 months you'll get 100,000 followers and you'll make $1 million, that guy's a fucking idiot, right? And as long as you all agree to trust him, we're going to keep the system the same way. But what I'm working on studying right now is this overhaul of the system that's working. And if we can agree on what numbers are important, and if we can all kind of pool our Spotify for Artists data, and we can learn from that data and infer from that data, then you'll start to see some sort of objectivity, right? Which isn't existing in art because people have become so distrustful of numbers, of anything they don't want to hear. We very much live in this like silver spoon snowflake society where everybody can do it and everybody can do it their way. And there's no need to like listen to the stuff you don't want to hear. And if I only want to see the curated facts that I like, I can curate those facts that way. But that's not functioning. It's not a functional society for people. It's not a functional society for artists right now, because the Death of the Artist, the book that I recommended to you, is
I wanted to get into this a
really,
lot.
yeah.
This
I
is an
think the
interesting
core of
topic.
that book, right, the core of that book is saying, hey, there's art with a capital A, right? There's art which is in museums and on exhibit, and then there's art, which is what we all sit down and make, right? We all make art. And as long as we're all agreeing to live in a capitalist society where money is important, art needs to make that money. But we're still kind of stuck on this capital A art, which was this vision created almost as like Hollywood propaganda, right? Early on in American history, where artists aren't supposed to want money, and like, if you take money, you're selling out. If we saw Martin Scorsese outside of a movie theater asking people for tickets, we'd be like, oh, what a schmuck, right? What a fucking idiot. But when we talk about Martin Scorsese, we say, oh my God, his movies have boxed hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Well, you can't have it both ways. So it's important for artists to understand that like artistic integrity is important. Eating is a little bit more important though. Like if you can't eat, then artistic integrity can shove it. So
also,
I
think we got to deconstruct this idea of what even is, and this is part of what the book is doing. What is the artistic integrity? To me,
right.
Artistic integrity itself is not a real thing, because what is art? Art is a reflection of the immediate experience of the individual. You know, like,
well,
you look at. I like the way that like somebody like Terrence McKenna, for example, would break down the idea of art. You know, it's that it's an intuitive sort of. It's comes from the experience of the individual. You know what I mean? And so if the experience of you as an individual is, I live in a capitalist society, I need to eat, and I need to have money to eat,
right,
then you're doing yourself a disservice by trying to live in this like capital A art world, which is very sort of like, oh, you know, you're supposed to be a hippie, you're supposed to be, you know, like in tune with the great spirit every second of your life. Because let me tell you something, even the people that you think are in tune with the great spirit all their lives fuck up. You know what I mean?
Right. Something I found a definition for art that finally feels satisfactory to me, and I can't remember the guy's name. He was a Russian guy. He was a Soviet, right? And he wrote this huge thesis on like what art was, but it boils down to, he says, art is the ability of a person to translate the artfulness of life through an object or through prose or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote. And I think that's the most brilliant definition I've heard, because it conveys something that a lot of our, like the sort of classic definition people throw around is like, oh, art is self-expression, right? Art is how you express yourself. It is. But it's also important to reflect that art is meant to be received, right? You can certainly make it for yourself. But when you make it for yourself, I don't know that it's really art. I think it's an activity that you do, and a very virtuous and good activity. And if you just want to be the best rapper in your bedroom, sick, happy for you, right?
You're already there. You did it.
Right.
Congratulations.
Great for
until
you.
Kanye West, until Kendrick Lamar walks through that bedroom door, you're that guy.
Yeah.
You got
and
it.
Do it. Like sing and dance and do art for fun, because it's fun. But like, when you take it seriously and when you say, I want to be an artist, you're understanding that you want people to receive you that way, and that your art isn't good if it's not translating the idea.
Yeah.
I just watched a Coen Brothers movie for a writing class, and I think they're really great at like doing this heady art film bullshit that like, I don't even know if anybody really likes it a lot of the time, but it's certainly an experience. And they're masters at getting you to translate this, right? And getting you to understand the artfulness that they're trying to get you to understand. So of course they make money, because they know that they're not just making a film to like show in their living room. They understand that they're making a movie that they're going to put in front of strangers who have vastly different experiences from them. And their job is to make that stranger feel the same thing that they felt when they watched it back.
Sure.
And in that way, I think you have to see art as a business, right?
Yeah, 100%, man. There was another thing that, sort of an idea I grew off of reading the book, which I'm only about a quarter, maybe a half of the way through the book
Yeah,
right now.
I'm
But
about.
it's
Yeah,
it's
I'm
a
about.
dense it is a dense book.
It's a tome.
It is, you got to like sit there with each chapter and be like, Jesus Christ. You got to give yourself a good week for each chapter to really absorb all the stuff he's trying to say. I think one of the offshoot ideas that I had in my own head was I was like, you look at sort of the bastions of this capital A art world, right? You look at like, you know, all these like gallery releases of all these pieces of art that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars upon their release, specifically paintings and sculptures and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And a lot of them are dog shit.
yeah.
A lot of them aren't enjoyable. And so I think
No,
that there's a very simple thing that artists need to really capture, which is that, yeah, there's a certain percentage of your art that needs to exist for other people. And if your
yeah.
art is intentionally, like, if your art is accidentally unenjoyable, well, then it's just shitty art. But if your art is intentionally unenjoyable, if you decided that, oh, I'm gonna use my shit to paint this canvas a bunch of smears of shit, you know what I mean? That's
I mean,
intentionally
when you look
unenjoyable,
at like,
and your art is not even art at that point. It's an expression of ego. It's an expression of sort of the idea that this is how I think you should see
yeah.
my art. You know what I mean?
I
Instead
mean,
of allowing the other person to experience what you experience. I think it needs to be like, art is an attempt to make objective that which is subjective.
well, I would even like to consider like a Jackson Pollock is really just great exclusivity marketing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's really just me going, you understand it, but not everybody does.
Yeah.
You're cool. You're
Mm-hmm.
artistic. You're, and I think that works for some brands, but something I really want to open people's eyes to is that like when you understand that your art needs to make money, you also need to understand that the way you make money from it has to sort of have that artfulness too, or you're going to burn out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm pitching this idea to artists and to businesses that your art needs to be marketable, your business needs to be marketable, but your marketing also needs to be art.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're just on Instagram and you're just on Twitter, like trying to up your follower count, that's great. But if you have fun and you enjoy it and you work on producing great content for it and can find ways to enjoy those mediums,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to resonate with that better. And that's what you're selling.
Yeah.
So that's how you sample your product,
There you
is
go.
through resonance. And you can develop a litany of brands this way. But you have to really be creative with it, and you have to have that same sort of flow that you do sitting with a guitar in your hand. You have to have that flow on the Instagram UI, and that's what I'm really working to study, is how like the philosophy of art as a business and where that's okay and where it isn't. I think everybody has different stuff we're willing to sell. Like for me, I might not be super attached to a drum sound, and so I can change a drum sound to make my art more marketable.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm like super attached to a specific lyric that people don't think works, keep the lyric, keep
Yeah.
the line. That's the art. But the everything else is that translation.
Yeah. And
I
you also
think
got to be aware of like I think on the flip side too, right?
yeah,
There's a delicate balance of what you're talking about between, the idea that you need to run art as a business, right? You need to make a considerable amount of money being an artist to even really say that you are one, because otherwise you're just
right.
kind of a hobbyist. You know what I mean?
You're not an
Not that,
artist until somebody else says so.
yeah, not that not that everything you do is invalidated by the fact that
I think it's
you
more valid,
don't make money. Yeah, right.
right?
Like the idea that it's not that you're not an artist just because you don't make money, but that in order to really say, oh, I'm a career artist, you have to be having a career, right? But then
Right.
the flip side of that is, I think that there can also be a homogenizing effect when you have too many people
Yeah.
overemphasize the business aspect of it, because it does need to
Well,
be an expression of something individual, of something deep and sort of feminine and connected to the divine.
yeah.
There's you
Well, and
can't.
that's what I'm saying, right? Is like it can't your art business can't just any business can't just be business.
Yeah.
Because that's not a purple cow. That's not, that's not how it's going. That's not what people are going to look at and be like, "Oh, wow. I really like that. And you're just going to fucking hate your hobby.
Hmm.
Imagine having any hobby you don't like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't do that. But people do it with art all the time because we're like, well, if I'm not like, if I have to experience pain and like I really, oh, I hate doing radio, then don't fucking do radio. Like if
Hmm.
you really hate it, don't do it. And if you want to do it, then want to do it,
Yeah.
right? And if like you're choosing between your poetry and therapy, take fucking therapy, right?
Hmm.
Because a good poet can write fucking good poetry and not be depressed.
You're right. The funny part is that I feel like the art that's made from somebody who has conquered something extraordinary versus someone who is going through something extraordinary has a lot to do with that too. You know, the idea that like if I can get on the other side of something and then I can
Yeah.
impart lessons upon you about how to get through that thing, that's a lot more inherently valuable than just having somebody who's like, oh, I'm going through this and you are too, so we bond
Yeah.
on that level, right? That creates almost this false bonding effect. That's why you have like, you know, remember when emo was a huge thing back when we
Oh
were in
yeah.
high school? Emo
Mhm.
was that. That's why to me it was so gross. You know what I mean? Over and over we had like emo bands. You know, the idea that you know the kids that would grow out their hair to like cover up one eye, and
Mhm.
pale white kids singing death metal music. And to me, like a lot of that music was just it didn't have any. Of course, it was for kids, so it wasn't really meant to, but it didn't have any wisdom to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like whereas like you take and I'm not just bashing emo to then go boost up hip hop, but you take a hip hop for example, a genre that we both love near and dear to our hearts. That is saying something from wisdom. Look
Mhm.
at some of the stuff that Public Enemy has put out.
Right.
That's coming from a space of like, this is what it's like to live where we live. We're not creating an artificial
Right.
problem. You know what I mean? This is a real thing. And not only have we experienced it, we've already come out on the other side of it to some extent. And we're taking you through a journey through the totality of this whole thing as opposed to just being like, I'm depressed today. So this is the song I'm
Right.
singing about my depression. Good. And I'm not trying to say that kids can't make good art, but like it's got to come from experience. Good art comes from experience,
Right.
in my own personal belief. You have to have gone through some shit in your life to say anything worth a
Oh,
fuck. You know?
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and not just through that, but like I want people to understand very importantly that like you don't just have to be sad.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't just have to be through pain. We experience so much stuff. And like I don't think we have enough words to express joy or like fond memory. And I think that we don't place as much importance on that stuff because it's easier to resonate through pain. But I think that creates this negative feedback loop where it's like, oh, like I'm an artist, so like I better have depression.
Hmm.
I better drink, right?
It's cheap. It's almost hack at this point. You know what I mean?
Right,
It's kind of cheap to say like, oh, I'm the depressed, anxious, crazy, alcoholic, drug-addled artist because it's
right,
not like first of all, that never existed. And it only existed in the minds of people that were doing it. You know what I mean? That I'm supposed to do this because it's an edgy artist thing to do. Second of
right,
all, it's not a sustainable thing. There's a reason the 27 Club is a thing, man.
right,
27 Club is a thing because those were tortured, drug-addled people that couldn't sustain their lifestyle and then died.
right,
And we
right,
and we sort of those are some of the most legendary people on earth, but we sort of boost them up to this mythical level where I feel like, you know, could you imagine how good it would be to hear, you know, Jimi Hendrix come out with an album in like 2003 that was some like deep, deep shit.
right.
You know what I mean? Like, so there's this like weird idea, an idea that I struggle with a lot. And I know, like, I feel like you've struggled with it too. The idea that, all right, I've passed my prime. You know what I mean? I'm turning a corner. I'm not going to be relatable to the market audience of, you know, younger people anymore because I'm about to be 25. You know what
Right,
I mean? Fuck that. Why would I want to relate to a bunch of people that are like little and have no idea about the world? You know what
right,
I mean? That just means that my ideas are are childish. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
they appeal to children. Now I know children are a good demographic to sell stuff to, but if I'm really gonna be an artist, I gotta appeal to people that I gotta appeal to in like a profound way. And some of the best artists have gone on to create some of their best work later in life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's
I love Anderson Paak as like a great example of that,
mm-hmm,
who like was killing it and then went through the rebrand
mm-hmm.
and jumped to a whole new level.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at somebody like I love Ram Dass, for example. You know what I mean? He's somebody who later, if you think about his search for enlightenment as art, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He got to it. He could have died when he was 40 and lived on as this legendary, you know, like super spiritual in the clouds type of guy. But then he lived on and on and on and on, made it to like 88, to the point where he was not only grounded but also spiritual. He was able to merge the duality and
Yeah.
really resonate with a ton of people, you know, that
Yeah.
where he wouldn't necessarily have if he died so young. You know what I mean? I feel
Yeah.
like same thing with like somebody like Amy Winehouse. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Imagine the stuff that she could have done. Okay, yeah, America loves to see a wreck, right? But imagine the stuff that she could have said if she came out with something later in life,
having gotten through that,
having gone through what she gone through. You know?
yeah.
Yeah. It's
I
wild.
think it's important for artists to get that, like, you can be healthy and you can want money,
yeah.
and you can do all that. So listen, I gotta go listen to a talk.
All right.
But let me
just
come
about
back
2:00 anyway.
because I'm very much in the research and ideation stage of all of this. So what I would like to do is give me some more time to like reminisce, to meditate on this, and then I'll come back and we'll talk more about creativity and hopefully less about the absolute garbage tier people in government right now.
Fuck that. People talk about that shit way too much anyway, dude. I told myself, I was like, I don't want to be the podcast that talks about politics because it's just nobody gives a shit. You know what I mean?
I do think it's important for art because everything is so tied in. Right?
It's important, like, but also nobody wants to fucking hear it. You know what I mean? No, everybody's like, my opinion is made at this point. Biden's the president. Let's move on. Do something else.
Hi, homie. I gotta go.
Right. Hell yeah, brother. Yo, before you go, I just got one last thing.
Yeah.
Usually with this podcast, what we do is, because you're an artist, because you're a musician, I have all the guests do some sort of performance at the end. You know what I mean? Now you can, but you don't have to do it right here. You could record it separately and send it over to me. But if you want to, like, play a song that you've written, recite any poetry, anything.
Let me do a very little bit of spoken word. Because
go for it.
I'm trying to do poetry. I'm like working on getting my poetry game up. So let me just leave you on love is not poetry. Love is war and peace. Peace.